Happy Monday, Gamecock fans. JC Shurburtt here with coffee. Today is Monday, May the 12th, the year of our Lord 2025. Certainly happy to be with you today. I think this is the 80th episode of coffee. So, trucking towards a hundy. We'll be there in June, July. Certainly happy that all of you have decided to join me this morning. It's always an honor and a privilege to address the Gamecock Nation and whoever else is out there listening. I'm I'm serious. I don't say it enough. I love the audience, love the interaction every day. Love doing this. I'm a lucky person. So I just wanted to say that. Hope you all had a wonderful Mother's Day weekend. I know I had a great weekend and looking forward to the week ahead. So this is it's going to be awesome. So, nevertheless, Gamecock softball, good news over the weekend. Didn't know if they'd quite make it in as the national seed. Works just like baseball. The top eight get home field advantage through the supers, and then they go to Oklahoma City for the College World Series. I'll talk more about that if they get there. I think it's profoundly unfair to have the College World Series in that sport 20 minutes from the number one program in America. When John Wooden was winning national championships at UCLA in basketball, they certainly didn't have the Final Four in Los Angeles every year. But that's just a little pet peeve of mine. I'm not going to talk too much about it. Very happy for Ashley Chastain Woodard and her team. First year back at Carolina. She's a Gamecock. Turned it around in one season. Um, and to have that seeding, it says something about the wins they had. And they had a lot of big wins. They played a tough schedule. If you look at the teams they played this year, they didn't shy away in the non-conference. And the SEC, as we know, that league, in this league in softball, it's tough. We say that with every sport, and it's true. So, nevertheless, first pitch on Friday night. It's on ESPN Plus, not SEC Network Plus. So adjust accordingly with that. 5:30 p.m. against Elon, the Phoenix. It used to be the Fighting Christians back in the day, and they changed that. But Elon will come in, and then the 2-3 matchup is Virginia, who the Gamecocks played to open the season. Virginia Cavaliers against, oh, here's that school again, the North Florida Ospreys. Gamecock baseball did get off the schneid against North Florida, but gosh, I'll say it again. I hate to see North Florida in any sport. I think they have a football. Do they have a football program? I think they do. Hope they don't schedule them in football. Anyway, they're down there in Jacksonville. It's a close drive for just about everybody. Virginia in baseball obviously has been, Carolina. They've been sent to Carolina and vice versa. So it makes sense. Makes total sense that that's the field. Speaking of baseball, I'm not going to talk about it too much today, other than to say we did not have a morning show on Friday. Jamie Bradford had something to come up that came up, and also did not have Stewart. So we missed that conversation. It came up after we had coffee. So I'm sorry I didn't let you guys know. But starting at 10, he's going to kick it off. I expect a big baseball conversation today. Mike Morgan will be in, as well as John Whittle on all things, but mostly baseball. I would think. So lots of coverage on the BigSpur.com. Whittle had for members only, a great comparison of the pitching staff this year versus last year. I talked about it enough on Friday in about 10, 15 minutes, and you guys didn't listen as much. So I don't think that's what you tune into to hear old JC talk about baseball. But the morning show will be where that's at. Phil and I will come in afterward with the show from 12 to 2. Certainly appreciate all of you guys listening to that. Today's topic, because it's coming up, folks. It's funny how things change a lot, and college sports has changed quite a bit. And one thing that we've gotten used to, and a lot of this stuff does take some time to get used to, and I can tell by the reactions out there and some things like that, to certain things that it's just, hey, me, myself included, it takes a while to kind of see when we look at something as good and we kind of get our calendars going, internal calendars, it changes. It's jolting. I know during COVID, it was crazy because I moved part of the time up to Chicago in 2019. Still get back to South Carolina quite a bit because of my business, but moved up here 2019 and the pandemic hit, and I'd never lived north of Nashville, Tennessee in my life. So I get up here and, I could get a good beat on like what time of the year it was, my whole life based on the weather. Nashville's a little cooler than South Carolina or Georgia, but it's usually by about April, it's, in the 70s and 80s, and it's the South. Uh, so the COVID hit, right? And and then sports were canceled, because at least I'd have sports, baseball's on in March, Final Four, all that good stuff. So I'm sitting there on April 15th of 2020. There's no sports. Everything's shut down. I'm in my garage and I look out and there's 6 inches of snow on my truck. And at that moment, I'm like, I have no idea. Internally, I have no idea what time it is, what day it is, what season it is, etc. And so my point in saying all that is we tend to kind of tell the time and get used to certain things in the calendar. And about, shoot, I guess it's class of 17, 18. They opened up the new signing period and summer official visits, and all of a sudden, the month of January gets deader and deader and deader as far as recruiting goes for that first week at Wednesday in February. I mean, there's really not a lot going on at all. I mean, they were ESPN's coverage of the second signing day this year, my friend Tom Luganbill and those fine folks. I mean, they were talking about North Carolina with Bill Belichick getting some three-star guys in and stuff like that. Now, the Gamecocks have had some exciting second signing days recently. I mean, Jordan Birch in that 2020 class, speaking of 2020, was one. And then Nick Harbor, of course, Gamecocks kind of stole the show when Harbor signed. And by the way, on him, I did notice Shane Beamer saying that he's night and day. That was a big statement about how Nick Harbor was looking at receiver. That aligns with what I was told. Don't let the spring game fool you. Didn't really have any targets. One of my guys at the spring game said that he was open a lot, but yeah, pass rush, and it's kind of wonky. So don't let the spring game kind of go, well, he didn't catch anything or get any targets or whatever. That aligns with what I've heard. So we'll see. I'm cautiously optimistic on that one. But anyway, when he signed, I mean, it was back and forth. It was one of those recruiting moments you don't forget. I got a text in the morning, he's going to Oregon. Then wait a minute, it's Carolina. Oh no, it looks like Oregon, and then it's finally Carolina. So he went back and forth. He's here doing well. Played a little golf with my man Cox by 90. If you check that out on social media in the Gamecock Bourbon Golf Tournament, and looked good doing it. Sank a really nice putt. Some guys can just do it all, right? I wish I had the ability to do that, but I don't. So recruiting now is all based basically in the summer. And I've mentioned before how with the facilities upgrades at Carolina, sort of the way they do it, there's one point in time about 20 years ago where it probably would have been an issue just because it's a university city along with state government and of course Fort Jackson, and it empties out in the summertime. Plus it's really hot when a lot of people are out on the lake or at the beach or whatever. Without the facilities they have now, it would have been a struggle. The official visits during the month of June and late May. But now it's fine. Gamecocks do quite well with these summer officials and have been for a while, so it's a non-issue. But certainly when we talk about facilities and what they actually mean and investing in your program and going first class with visits, that helps. It's helpful to do that because you're making an impression. Do official visits tip the scales maybe like they used to when it's high pressure? I remember when it was January, nobody had really decided. 80% of the guys, 70 at least, were uncommitted. Commitments with the media and all that got earlier and earlier, but you still had a mad dash. Florida State, with Bobby Bowden was there and Kevin Steele was there as kind of recruiting coordinator. They would bring everybody in on the last weekend, and half of them would be committed, and they'd flip a bunch. That was their thing. So that was interesting. But that doesn't happen anymore, especially in January. And Good time, good old summer visits and camps, and it's a busy, busy June. So stay tuned. There'll be a lot of football stuff in the month of June. It used to kind of be a dead month if the baseball team was not advancing and all that. It's kind of June, and see you at SEC media days in our business. But now it's you don't really quite get that break until the end of the month. But it's coming up, folks. We're at May 12th right now. This month is flying by. And a couple of months ago, we kind of did a preview of the May 30th visitors. That's changed now. The big one of the big weekends. There's several big weekends. There's not really a big weekend, but this May 30th official visit weekend is shaping up to be quite nice. And a lot of players at key positions. I think it's pretty obvious defensive tackle. If I had to say what is the biggest position of need, they have to start signing some high school D tackles, get them in the pipeline, get them developed as part of the program. I think that they're still going to have to hit the transfer portal at that position for a while. When you have a 2022 class where you went 0 for 4, and then you have a Xavier McLeod that things just didn't work out for here, and he leaves and goes to Georgia. And then you start talking about like the last cycle before the Caleb Williams and Christian Ingram cycle. We just completed 2024, small class, no D tackles from the high school ranks at least. You got to start getting some in the pipeline. Well, good news, they're on a bunch of them, and some in North Carolina, some in Georgia, the state of South Carolina, and you never know if somebody's going to pop up at camp. We know camp is something that produces players quite well. Nick Emanware was probably the most infamous camp evaluation, but there's been several more. And on the D line, I'll never forget Devontae Wyatt from Georgia under the Muschamp staff. Lance Thompson, those guys had him in, immediately offered, he immediately committed. But here comes UGA. And they ended up flipping him, and he ends up playing a lot on national championship teams and getting drafted. So there was one camp eval that got away under the previous staff. But so it's camp season, it's official visit season. It's going to be something where with this 2026 class, the story of it will be written between May 30th and the end of July. Because what happens is guys go on their official visits, and then they start scheduling decisions. And a lot of those end up lingering July 4th, 7th, whatever. They kind of are, as we say in the media business, because that's how you get paid for advertising money a lot, it's in rears. So the decisions are in rears. Very few go meet with the coach and commit type things like it used to be. Like the good old days. I don't know if those are the good old days or not. I don't mind spreading it out. That's kind of the thing there. But South Carolina obviously has a needed D tackle, needs at other spots as well. It's a line of scrimmage league in the SEC, and the Gamecocks recruit pretty well in the line of scrimmage portal and from the high school ranks. But, this May 30th official visits group does look pretty strong and does have a lot of linemen in it. And I will say this, when we talk about the transfer portal and we talk about like what all everybody's doing it different around, if you look around the SEC. And I think with South Carolina, what they are is sort of a hybrid. It's similar to Missouri in the sense that it's a nice mix of high school players and portal players. I think when you compare Missouri and South Carolina, what Eli Drinkwitz does versus Shane Beamer, Missouri's a little heavier in the portal, a little more reliant than South Carolina. And I think that's probably because of the Gamecocks footprint and sort of the geographic access to more players out of high school. Missouri's stuck in the middle of the state in Como. St. Louis, a lot of the talent that comes out of St. Louis is from East St. Louis. That's actually in a different state. It's in Illinois. And then the Kansas City area does have good players. They'll pop up. Heck, Mason Love, the Gamecocks kicker, is from the Kansas City area. But other than that, it's kind of a, it's a state with the population in Missouri is kind of one side or the other. Every now and then you'll get like a Dorial Green Beckham from, I think he was from Springfield, the state capital. But, or no, not the state capital. I'm sorry. That's where Southwest Missouri was. Missouri State is located. The capital of Missouri is Jefferson City. So I'm sorry for messing that up. Springfield's the capital of Illinois, but Springfield, Missouri is where Dorial Green Beckham was from, if you remember him a few years ago. Every now and then they'll have that, but most of the time, they're a little bit more portal heavy. Not as portal heavy as an Ole Miss. That's a different type of deal. They are a portal program, which again I said this before, it makes sense because if you look back through the years, the population of Mississippi, it's growing like the rest of the South, but they're still behind. They still have a big junior college system over there. You don't have as many prospects. Some of them do still want to go out of state. And you got two schools, Mississippi State and Ole Miss, and it's a lot like the state of South Carolina, where you're either a Bulldog or a Rebel. That's just kind of how it is. And so, and they fight over what they've got. But if you look back to Mississippi State in the 90s, Jackie Sherrill won the SEC West in 1998. Gamecock fans will know they had a good team. They were a permanent opponent for South Carolina from 1992 to 2002. And as the Gamecock luck would have it, Jackie Sherrill had a pretty bad team in '02. Carolina beat them pretty good. And then pop, they go off the schedule. And now you get to keep Arkansas. Arkansas is still winning divisions under Houston Nutt, but they kind of went downhill under Sylvester Croom and had one good year. And Shane Beamer and Ellis Johnson were on Sylvester Croom's staff, but they had to kind of rebuild because the JUCO, it's a lot like the portal when back then when you go JUCO heavy. You get a bad batch, you're going down. I mean, and then you're kind of thrown off with that. The portal, you can stagger guys. It's not just a 2-year deal, so it's a little bit more sound. But if you look at what was successful then with the JUCOs at Mississippi State, why wouldn't Ole Miss be a portal, the portal team? I mean, it's numbers, it's access to players. Hugh Freeze he recruited really well there out of the high school ranks, as we all saw. He got in a little bit of trouble for some things, but a lot of those guys, Laramie Tunzel was from Florida, Laquan Treadwell was from Illinois, Kim Dichie was from Georgia. They had a lot of good in-state players too. DK Metcalf comes to mind as a big-time recruit, but there's just not enough. And so that's why Ole Miss does it. But South Carolina has a little bit more, not just with the state, which is a gold mine, in my opinion, for this program, because the in-state players have low bust rates, but this year trying to get into North Carolina. Carolina's done a good job of chiseling away in Virginia. We know about the DMV, the greater DC area in Maryland. They still recruit Georgia quite well. Florida and Alabama have some representation on this visit list I'm about to tell you about, but they do a good job. But then they hit the portal to kind of backfill. So every place is different. I really can't argue at all with how Shane Beamer has done it here. I think that they've used the transfer portal to their advantage, but you look at the NFL draft results and the players signing, they're not all portal guys. You have some homegrown guys mixed in there as well. Tonka Hemingway and TJ Sanders, Nick Eamon-Warray are all in-state players that not a one of them. I'm sorry, Tonka was a low 4-star, but you got 2 3-stars, and then you kind of look back on it and other players that have not been ranked high from the state are getting drafted, and that's not just here either. There were 9 South Carolinians drafted in the high school products drafted in this past draft, and I think Tyrion Ingram Dawkins from Georgia was the high and maybe Robbie Oots from Alabama. Maybe they were the 2 highest ranked ones. I liked Oots out of high school. I thought he was a blocking, big time blocker. Tight end wasn't bad catching the ball either. But so 9, and that was a bigger number than it's normally been. But so South Carolina has some more advantages than maybe say a Missouri or an Ole Miss. Although the state of Missouri and state of Mississippi put out players too. But that's how they do it. So the high school recruiting is very important. And they're in on a lot of guys. I mean, the season they had last year. It always, the season you have in the fall always impacts the next class a lot more. It is a very good year in state, though this is 100% out of state coming in on May 30th. So it's kind of a different focus. So they'll kick it off with a lot of out of staters. So here are the guys coming in. And I'll start with Brian Harris, who's a three-star D tackle who's rising up the ranks. He was committed to Maryland when Carolina offered him. He's out of Mandarin High School in Jacksonville, Florida. I think the Gamecocks have a good shot at him, but all of a sudden there's a lot of competition. You have Alabama, Michigan, Oklahoma, Penn State, and South Carolina. And he announced the other day, Hale McGranahan has an article up on the Big Spur about it, that he is down to those five, and he is going to make a decision before this visit. So if you commit someplace else, I would imagine the official visit is off. But who knows? Guys, they may not want him to visit. But Carolina was really the first because he committed early to Maryland. They were kind of the first ones to get in there on him, and then all these other schools followed. Obviously, impressive offer list. He is rated 3 stars, but I'm telling you, with D tackle this cycle, you're going to have to take. The star ratings. You need numbers there. You need numbers there, and they already on some highly rated ones and some guys that I think will end up developing quite nicely. So that's the one. That's the big. I don't know if that's the biggest one here. There's some other big ones, but if they can get that commit 7 days before he starts the official, that's a lot. That's good momentum. It's been a while really since they've gotten a commitment. But line of scrimmage, man, you want all those guys you can get. And I like him. I talked to somebody the other day that was really singing his praises out of Mandarin High School in Jacksonville, Florida. Certainly, Jacksonville is a place Carolina's recruited with success over the years as far as landing guys. Some guys back in the Spur or like mid-Spurrier era, maybe didn't pan out like people thought. But of course, Shaq Wilson was a really good linebacker out of First Coast High School that was here. Pup Howard is a good player. Obviously he was here and played a lot in 2023, then went back home to Florida. So it's not like they're over. Hayden Hurst came from the Jacksonville area, Perry Orth. Those two came via the walk-on program, but they're just south of Jacksonville. So it's a good place to recruit. It's 4 hours away, 3 hours. Somebody can make it in 3. Anybody make it that drive in 3? I don't know. I heard 3 the other day, but my experience is 4, but maybe I have to stop too often. I don't know. On New Year's, when you're heading to Florida for a bowl game, I can almost guarantee you it's going to take longer to get to Jacksonville. Nevertheless, he's coming in. Other D tackles. This guy they just offered, Whitley Cadeau from Booker T. Washington in Georgia. Georgia's also offered him 6'5", 295. There's your Devontae Wyatt guy. The inner city Atlanta, Booker T, just popping up on the radar. Gamecocks, like I said, offered. He immediately scheduled an official. UGA's also offered. I know many of you are yelling right now, why in the world does Georgia offer every D tackle Carolina does? It's because Carolina's going after good players. They're not. I don't think necessarily Georgia. Georgia, I think, was before Carolina in this instance, but it's. You want to compete with the best, you're going to have to recruit against the best. And, it's early with him, so I don't really know what the situation will ultimately be. But he's coming in. Here's a familiar name in the sense that, he's one of your rivals' most notorious players, and he's an assistant coach there now, Ben Boulware. Excuse my dog for sneezing in the background, by the way. But this guy isn't related to the Ben Boulware from Clemson. His name is Ben Boulware, 6'5", 300-pound guy from North Carolina. Big, this is a guy that is going to have to develop. I really like him from D-line heaven. The Carolinas is D-line heaven. I think Carolina's got an excellent shot there. Other competition, obviously, with him. So those are your 3, or those 4 actually. 7 Cloud, speaking of UGA, is committed to Georgia. He's a junior college player. Carolina's kind of danced around with him ever since he's a high school player, but There's one to look out for too. He's good, got a lot of good upside. Has been in junior college, but still technically committed to Georgia. And then another Georgia. This one's from North Carolina. Pierre Dean was originally an O-line recruit. Now he's a D-line recruit. Solid four-star guy though. His brother Jared Wilson went to Georgia. So Georgia's probably it's either going to be he wants to follow in his footsteps or he wants to uh, do carve his own path. Jalewis Solomon did not end up at Auburn where his brother was, but Pierre Dean, that's a guy. He's on the record stated top two Carolina, Georgia. So and I believe him. So there's your D tackle group. That's five guys technically at D tackle coming in. And then they have more scheduled for later. Aiden Harris obviously comes to mind. So that's a group right there. If you can get two of them, great. Three is even better. So we'll see kind of how that goes. Now corners, there's a couple of corners coming in. Kerry Adams, who's from the Towson, Maryland, Loyola national offer list. Oregon is supposed to be a team that's big with him, but Torian Gray and Sterling Lucas and the folks that recruit up there, they really like him. I think they've got a good story to tell. South Carolina's obviously got players from DC and Maryland on the roster. Hopefully that continues. Of course, the defensive end Carter Meadows has a top four, big time guy out of DC, and the Gamecocks are included in that. This is not his official visit weekend though. Adams will be a big time pull. He's a really good quarterback. He and Samari Smoke Matthews from North Carolina. You signed those two guys at corner. That's a hell of a cornerback twofer right there. However, I don't know that they'll sign both. But hey, he's visiting. He likes the Gamecocks. Competition is obviously stiff with that. The other corner is a guy I really like, Birmingham, Alabama, KJ Johnson. Carolina kind of got on him this spring. A lot of offers popping up. He's visited a couple times, really seems high on the Gamecocks. Carolina's had success through the years with defensive backs from Alabama. Captain Munderland, Darian Stewart were both from the Yellowhammer State. So keep an eye on KJ Johnson. That's probably a pretty good evaluation by Torian Gray, who that's the book on Torian Gray. He can take the 4 stars and turn them into NFL players, and 5 stars turn them into NFL players, and he can take 3 stars and turn them into NFL players. He's agnostic, It's just results with Torian Gray, and of course, Gamecocks are going to have a good group of corners this year. My goodness, Brandon Cisse, Miles Norwood joining that room, and you have Judge Collier and then Vakari Swain. We'll be back with the program after Memorial Day to start the summer. I mean, that's a solid 4-person group, and you got guys like DeMarcus Leach sort of waiting in the wings. I mean, it's secondary's got players now. That's going to be a good group to watch this year. But KJ Johnson from Alabama and Corey Adams from Towson, Maryland, those are the corners coming in. And then on the offensive line, and with back to Pierre Dean real quick, I don't know what side of the ball, if he ends up picking Carolina. I know Georgia's definitely like you're a D tackle. If he ends up picking Carolina, I think there's some question, but I mean, I don't know. I think with the situation at D tackle, if he wants to play D tackle, they probably say, have at it. But then there's an offensive tackle, a guy I like really from North Carolina. Visited recently, had a good weekend or good couple days visiting. JB Shabazz. That's an offensive lineman name too. Offensive tackle from North Carolina. He's at one of the Forsyth schools. Pierre Dean's at one of the Forsyths. It's Clemens and Kernsville and that area. And JB Shabazz is 6'7", 295. So he's a big old like Jatavius Shivers looking dude. Good feet. Some have him ranked pretty high. His composite is not 4. He's 3 stars by 24/7 Sports. Composite may be up there towards 4-star level. So he's, if you can get him, you got a good offensive line group already. Zion Giles continues to, shoot up the rankings list across the industry. And I think Lonnie Teasley, obviously, there's such a separation between recruiting on paper and how the O line has performed this past year. I'm not. I'm going to give 2023 a pass, obviously, but I think there's two things. One major thing and then one other thing. I think with regards to offensive line's performance, and we're going to find out the answers this season because there's on paper there's really no reason not to be improved, and I'll just leave it at that. But I think part of it is there's a lag when you recruit well on the offensive line and when those guys are actually ready to go be what people think they're going to be. It's the rule of thumb is in your third year. Um, if they're not ready to go by their third year, there are some that more ready in their fourth. But it takes some time at that position across the board. There's not a lot of Josiah Thompsons. They can just go out there and hold up and play well. And even Josiah, while he was an All-American and All SEC, when you're talking about freshman, a true freshman, you compare him to some older tackles, well, not so much. He made some mistakes, and he's got to take a step forward this year to be, what the Gamecocks hope he could be. But obviously, the upside's there, and the experience helps. So it may just be the lag, right? When you're talking about individual players and do they have the talent and all that. Although they did have three seniors up front last year. But if you're just looking at the recruiting and only and talking about disconnect between rankings and recruiting well and play, that may be it. It may, and as I'm saying this, may, not saying definitely, because like I said, the answers will come. But one theory would be is that these guys are going to be better. They're just not better right now. And so you have to use some older dudes. And they've got 4 out of the portal this year that are older as well. So we'll see what happens on the O line. But JB Shabazz is coming to town. And then the other little thing could be too, because we've had some reports that Shula, the new offensive coordinator Mike Shula at Carolina, has kind of restructured some things. People were asking about the zone read, and obviously it's intriguing when you start taking thought when you go back and I know when I hear zone read, I think back to like Rich Rod at Clemson with Woody Dantzler, Rich Rod at West Virginia with Pat White, because he's kind of the zone read master. Even Dan Mullen at Florida with Tim Tebow, Gus Malzahn with our guy Cam Newton and Nick Marshall at Auburn, that kind of thing. So I mean, it's exciting to me too. But apparently what they were trying to do last year with the zone read, which Dowell Loggins, a lot of that, the triple option stuff came from Houston Nutt in Arkansas, that background. And I don't know that there's a big difference. I know Houston Nutt ran the Wildcat pretty successfully. And I know Gus Malzahn was his OC, for at least a little while there. That was a big hullabaloo, out of the University of Arkansas back in the day. But apparently the offensive, there's a lot of different assignment things and reads that the O-line has to have with that. And maybe, thinking too much. And I understand in the NFL that you're all O-line, you've got to be more complex and smart and pull and all this other stuff. I don't know that at the high school or college ranks that's always necessary. If it causes your guys to play slow, especially in the SEC where you're dealing with a slew of jumbo athletes across from you that are just freaks. I mean, the D linemen in this league, they're very freakish, and you got to do all you can to match that. And I'm not criticizing Dowell or anything like that. Hell, Carolina was 4th in the SEC in rushing offense last year, so that's. They've been toward the bottom most years, even under Spurrier without a Marcus Lattimore, Mike. Those early Spurrier years, that number they were down 12th, 11th. If they got 100 yards a game, that would be good. But South Carolina did run it well last year, so maybe that's not it. I never thought the run blocking was as consistent as it needed to be. So we'll see. We'll see what kind of adjustments Mike Shula can make to the offense, to the game plan, or game plan, to the assignments or whatever, as they try to get the offensive line going this year yet again. But back to the recruiting, which is the focus of the show. There's no complaints with the players they've been bringing in, and heck, man, it's a struggle on the offensive line in the SEC. No matter how well you recruit, I'll always use the example of the 2019 South Carolina Georgia game. Um, yeah, gosh, Carolina comes to town with a losing record and beats Georgia, primarily because on the defensive line, you had a Javon Kinlaw, you had a young JJ Enigbare, you had some dudes up there that played lights out. I mean, it wasn't just Izzy McWamu, you know. Jake Fromm was under duress just about the whole day. Um, and Carolina won. That's the kind of thing that can happen to you. And Georgia, look, their recruiting was, crazy good by then. I mean, there's a bunch of 4 and 5 stars up there. So, that's an example of on any given day, your offensive line, no matter how good it is, can get its ass kicked in this league. So that's the reality of it. What you want to do is avoid that for the most part, work around it for the most part, and all that. And part of the way you do it's recruiting well. If you're going to go down anyway, I'd rather go down with quick twitch athleticism and studs and guys that can play at the next level or that have a chance and that can match the athleticism to a certain point. And that's why you recruit well. And then it's development and gelling and scheme and execution and the mental part of it, blocking assignments and things like that. So we're going to get some answers this year up front. I would hesitate. I would be lying to you if I said I wasn't disappointed by the offensive line as a whole last year, though they did have some good performances, especially individually at times. But all those sacks they were giving up early were just tough. Not all on the O line, obviously. Lenore Sellers feeling his way, blah blah blah. But that's it's going to be an interesting year up front because Carolina's offense in general, they need to do. They're going to need to open holes in the run game for the backs or Sellers, give Sellers time, get guys open, all that happy stuff. But JB Shabazz, back to the topic, obviously, is the one offensive lineman, the one big ugly coming in on that May 30th weekend. So, yeah, like I said, there's no in-state players that are coming in as far as the 9 who were listed that first official visit weekend. And that's the one we'll focus on. Obviously, we're going to get into the other weekends pretty soon. These lists are subject to change. But, especially when you look at 5 potential D tackles coming in that first weekend, that's important right off the bat. I mean, there's no doubt that D tackle has to be they have to have a good year recruiting at that position for a number of reasons. I'm not saying they need to cancel football or apply to get into the Sun Belt Conference if they don't. It's not that dramatic, but it is important. And if you're looking for a recruiting focus, it is at D tackle for the class of 2026. All right. Be sure to catch the morning show. If you like Carolina baseball or you're concerned, I would listen to the morning show today, even if you have to catch it on replay or whatever. Phil and I will be along after that with the show. Should be another fun Monday in that department. You can get a Chief Sports app right here on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, share on this YouTube channel if you're listening to us on podcast stream on Inside the Gamecocks on Spotify or Apple or whatever. Please go give us a nice rating. 5 stars, man. Come on, let's do it. Nevertheless, this is JC Shurburtt. This has been Coffee on a Monday. Signing off. Holla at you soon.